Hare Krishna. Welcome back, everyone, to the live studios here in Radha Lane, right next to Shri Radha Nilamadhava Temple in ISKCON of Houston, Texas, USA. We're in the middle of the Bhagavatam, well, not in the middle. We just started rereading the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and we're on the first verse of the first canto in the purport. But before we start, we'd like to welcome back Krishnangi Renu and her daughter and family, and everyone else. Welcome back Bhakta John. He wasn't here because he went and did some work or did some festivals or went on holiday or something, whatever. And everyone else, all the regulars, and all of you out in cyberspace. So nice to know that you're here. We got a report from Ragaleka Devi Dasi, whose husband's account runs the fan page, and we've gone over 600 followers, which is nice. Another milestone we've passed. Okay, so now let's hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam without further ado. Before we do, let's hear Sanatana Goswami's beautiful glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. This is from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava by Sanatana Goswami, and it's his 107th out of 108th obeisance that he offered to the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It goes like this. Sarvas Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwanduditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvadasa Vasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Manistadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu, saduta dayin, atini chotata kada, ha namuchikadapyan mam, premna ret kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, reading from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 1, Purport. I didn't name that properly. It should have been 111. I only put 1.1. Anyway, they'll get the idea. Hare Krishna. All right, so I want to read the verse again, the first verse. This is a very long purport, and we'll probably, I think we'll finish it today, but maybe not. If you read 41 pages every day, then you finish the whole Bhagavatam in 1 year exactly. But that takes, constant reading, and it takes on an average of an hour and a half of reading. But we're only reading an hour, so we don't get 41 pages in a day, especially when we have really long purports. So it'll take a little longer to do it this way, rather than just reading without the live stream. Okay, so now I want to read the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasyanyatot Itaratash Charteshu Abhigya Swarat Tenhe Brahma Rida Ya Adi Kavaye Muhyanti Yat Suryaha Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargong Risha Damnam Swaina Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Padam Dhimahi. O my Lord Sri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no cause other beyond him. It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge under the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So the whole Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses, explains that verse. We are on the paragraph in the purport of that verse, beginning, in the Vedic literatures it is said. And I don't have a page number on the computer, so you have to find it. In the Vedic literatures, it is said that the absolute truth, personality of Godhead, is the chief amongst all living personalities. All living beings, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to the smallest ant, are individual living beings. And above Brahma, there are even other living beings with individual capacities. And the personality of Godhead is also a similar living being. And he is an individual, as are the other living beings. But the Supreme Lord, or the Supreme Living Being, has the greatest intelligence, and he possesses supermost, inconceivable energies of all different varieties. If a man's brain can produce a space satellite, one can very easily imagine how brains higher than man can produce similar wonderful things which are far superior. The reasonable person will easily accept this argument, but there are stubborn atheists who would never agree. Srila Vyasadeva, however, at once accepts the Supreme Intelligence as the Parameshwara. He offers his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Intelligence, addressed as the Para, or the Parameshwara, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that Parameshwara is Sri Krishna, as admitted in the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures delivered by Sri Vyasadeva, and specifically in this Srimad-Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that there is no other Paratattva, Samam Bonam, than Himself. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva at once worships the Paratattva, Sri Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto. You don't have it? You can't find it? Really? It's there in it's a purport of the first. Well, we're going to try to get you a book to solve the problem. Maybe not. Nice try. Unscrupulous persons stole the book. No, sorry. Unscrupulous persons go immediately to the 10th canto, and especially to the 5 chapters which describes the Lord's rasa dance. It's toward the end, you know. This portion of the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of this great literature. Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one is sure to misunderstand the Lord's worshipable transcendental pastimes called rasa dance and His loving affairs with the gopis. This subject matter is highly spiritual, and only the liberated persons who have gradually attained to the stage of Paramahansa can transcendentally relish this rasa dance. Srila Vyasadeva therefore gives the reader the chance to gradually develop spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore he purposefully invokes a Gayatri mantra, Dhimahi. This Gayatri mantra is meant for spiritually advanced people. When one is successful in chanting the Gayatri mantra, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. One must therefore acquire Brahminical qualities or be perfectly situated in the quality of goodness in order to chant the Gayatri mantra successfully and then attain to the stage of transcendentally realizing the Lord, His name, His fame, His qualities, and so on. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the narration of the Sarupa of the Lord manifested by His internal potency. And this potency is distinguished from the external potency, which has manifested the cosmic world. You found it? Oh, good. Which is within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the two in this shloka. Sri Vyasadeva says herein that the manifested internal potency is real, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of material existence is only temporary and illusory, like the mirage in the desert. In the desert mirage, there is no actual water. There is only the appearance of water. Real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality of which this is but a shadow is the spiritual world. Absolute truth is in the spiritual sky, not the material sky. In the material sky, everything is relative truth. That is to say, one truth depends on something else. This cosmic creation results from interaction of the 3 modes of nature, and the temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul, who appears in so many species of life, including the higher demigods, like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, and so on. In actuality, there is no reality in the manifested world. There appears to be reality, however, because of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world, where the personality of Godhead eternally exists with his transcendental paraphernalia. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner because everything is done under his direction. He knows everything about the construction, both directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows every nook and corner, although affairs are apparently being carried out by the demigods. Beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no one is independent in the matter of the material creation, for the hand of the Lord is seen everywhere. All material elements, as well as all spiritual sparks, emanate from him only. And whatever is created in this material world is but the interaction of two energies, the material and the spiritual, which emanate from the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. A chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in reality, the living entity works in the laboratory under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And the materials with which he works are also supplied by the Lord. The Lord knows everything directly and indirectly, and he is cognizant of all minute details, and he is fully independent. He is compared to a mine of gold, and the cosmic creations in so many different forms are compared to objects made from the gold, such as gold rings, necklaces, and so on. The gold ring and the gold necklace are qualitatively one with the gold in the mine, but quantitatively, the gold in the mine is different. Therefore, the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. Conditioned souls beginning from Brahma, who engineers the entire universe down to the insignificant ant, are all creating, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator other than his own self. This is called Maya, or illusion. Because of his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses, and thus he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape without the aid of a superior intelligence. This is refuted in this shloka by Srila Vyasadeva. Since the complete whole, or the absolute truth, is the source of everything, nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Similarly, the creation is the body of the absolute whole. Therefore, the absolute knows everything, directly and indirectly, that happens in the creation. In the Shruti mantra, it is also stated that the absolute whole, or Brahman, is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, and everything is maintained by him. And at the end, everything enters into him. That is a law of nature. In the Smriti mantra, the same is confirmed. It is said there that the source from which everything emanates at the beginning of Brahma's millennium, and the reservoir to which everything ultimately enters, is the absolute truth, or Brahman. Material scientists take it for granted that the ultimate source of the planetary system is the sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. Anybody know the source of the sun? You haven't read any scientific journal that says what the source of the sun is? I didn't think so. Herein, the ultimate source is explained. According to the Vedic literature, Brahma is the creator of this universe. Yet he had to meditate to get inspiration for such creation. Therefore, neither Brahma nor the sun is the ultimate creator. It is stated in this shloka that Brahma was taught Vedic knowledge by the personality of Godhead. One may argue that Brahma, being the original living being, could not be inspired because there was no other living being at that time. Herein it is stated that the Supreme Lord inspired the secondary creator, Brahma, in order that Brahma could carry out his creative function. So the supreme intelligence behind all creations is the absolute Godhead, Sri Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna states that it is He only who superintends the creative energy, Prakriti, which constitutes the totality of matter. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva does not worship Brahma, but the Supreme Lord who guides Brahma in his creative activities. In this shloka, the particular words abhigya and swarat are significant. These two words distinguish the Supreme Lord from all other living entities. No other living entity is either abhigya or swarat. That is, no one is either fully cognizant or fully independent. Even Brahma has to meditate upon the Supreme Lord in order to create. Then what to speak of great scientists like Einstein? The brains of such a scientist are certainly not the products of any human being. Scientists cannot manufacture such a brain. And what to speak of foolish atheists who defy the authority of the Lord? Even Mayavadi impersonalists who flatter themselves that they can become one with the Lord are neither abhigya or swarat. Such impersonalists undergo severe austerities to acquire knowledge to become one with the Lord. But ultimately they become dependent on some rich disciple who supplies them with money to build monasteries and temples. Atheists like Ravana or Hiranyakashipu had to undergo severe penances before they could flout the authority of the Lord. But ultimately they were rendered helpless and could not save themselves when the Lord appeared before them as cruel death. This is also the case with the modern atheists who also dare to flout the authority of the Lord. Such atheists will be dealt with similarly, for history repeats itself. Whenever men neglect the authority of the Lord, nature and her laws are there to penalize them. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, in the well-known verse, Yada, Yada, hi dharmasya, glani. Whenever there is a decline in dharma and a rise of adharma, O Arjuna, then I incarnate myself. That the Supreme Lord is all perfect is confirmed in all Shruti mantras. It is said in the Shruti mantras that the all-perfect Lord threw a glance over matter and thus created all living beings. The living beings are part and parcels of the Lord, and He impregnates the vast material creation with seeds of spiritual sparks, and thus the creative energies are set in motion to enact so many wonderful creations. An atheist may argue that God is no more expert than a watchmaker. But of course God is greater, because He can create machines in duplicate male and female forms. The male and female forms of different types of machineries go on producing innumerable similar machines without God's further attention. If a man could manufacture such a set of machines that could produce other machines without His attention, then he could approach the intelligence of God. But that is not possible, for each machine has to be handled individually. Therefore, no one can create as well as God. Another name for God is Asamordva, which means that no one is equal to or greater than Him. Param Satyam, or the Supreme Truth, is He who has no equal or superior. This is confirmed in the Shruti mantras. It is said that before the creation of the material universe, there existed the Lord only, who is master of everyone. That Lord instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge. That Lord has to be obeyed in all respects. Anyone who wants to get rid of the material entanglement must surrender unto Him. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. When an intelligent man surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna and knows completely that Krishna is the cause of all causes, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, then only can such an intelligent man become a Mahatma, or great soul. But such a great soul is rarely seen. Only the Mahatmas can understand the Supreme Lord, that the Supreme Lord is the primeval cause of all creations. He is Parama, or ultimate truth, because all other truths are relative to Him. He is omniscient. For Him, there is no illusion. Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Srimad-Bhagavatam was not compiled by Sri Vyasadeva. And some of them suggest that this book is a modern creation written by someone named Bopadev. In order to refute such meaningless arguments, Sri Sridhar Swami points out that there is reference to the Bhagavatam in many of the oldest Puranas. This first shloka of the Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri mantra. There is reference to this in the Matsya Purana, which is the oldest Purana. In that Purana it is said about the Bhagavatam that in it there are many narrations of spiritual instructions, that it begins with the Gayatri mantra, and that it contains the history of Vritrasura. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. There is reference to the Bhagavatam in other Puranas also. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. Yeah? You don't have to stay. I mean, if you've got other things to do, it's okay. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on the full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. There is reference to the Bhagavatam in other Puranas also, where it is clearly stated that this work was finished in 12 cantos, which include 18,000 shlokas. In the Padma Purana also there is a reference to the Bhagavatam in a conversation between Gautama and Maharaj Ambarisha. The king was advised therein to read regularly Srimad-Bhagavatam if he desired liberation from material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt about the authority of the Bhagavatam. Within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Balabhacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam, and the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure sex psychology, Adi Rasa, devoid of mundane inebriety. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. In modern civilization, sex life is the focal point for all activities. Wherever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. Its reality is experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact is in the Absolute Truth, and thus the Absolute Truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and contain pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable, mundane sex life because they have overstressed the impersonality of the Absolute Truth. Consequently, Haribol, thank you for coming. Consequently, man without information of the actual spiritual form of sex has accepted perverted material sex as the all-in-all. There is a distinction between sex life and the diseased material condition and spiritual sex life. This Srimad-Bhagavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable him to transcend the three modes of material activities, fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and worship of functional deities as inculcated in Vedic verses. That's the end of the purport to the first verse of the first canto, of the first chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So it's a weighty subject. To understand the actual supreme absolute truth is not a light thing. It's a heavy thing. It's the heaviest thing. So therefore this first purport is so deep and so meaningful and refers to so many authoritative, deeply learned and perfect, morally and spiritually, character-wise, in every way, as authorities. Just like sometimes if there's a big court case and they have to have character witnesses, they go through a whole bunch of witnesses before they get witnesses that are actually good enough in character that they can believe them. Because in order to be truthful and have good character, you have to act properly. And you have to have acted properly for a long time. Otherwise, who's going to believe you? Nowadays, even the top authorities are all shouting out fake this, fake that, fake this, fake that. And everybody now, nobody believes anybody about anything. Therefore, it's a very delicate situation in this material world right now. And to come across real authority and weighty explanations that explain actually what's going on here, what the purpose of life is, and what we're supposed to be doing, and what we're not supposed to be doing. It's very rare to be found, and very rare to be heard and understood properly. Okay, let's go on to the next verse. Text 2. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapa trayon mulanam Srimad-Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim va parar ishvara sadyo ridyavarudhyate tra kritibik sushushubis tatchanat. Translation. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Purport. Religion includes 4 primary subjects, namely pious activities, economic development, satisfaction of the senses, and finally, liberation from material bondage. Irreligious life is a barbarous condition. Indeed, human life begins when religion begins. Eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating are the 4 principles of animal life. These are common both to animals and to human beings. But religion is the extra function of the human being. Without religion, human life is no better than animal life. Therefore, in human societies, there is some form of religion which aims at self-realization and which makes reference to man's eternal relationship with God. In the lower stages of human civilization, there is always competition to lord it over the material nature. Or in other words, there is a continuous rivalry. Hare Krishna, Haribo. In other words, there is a continuous rivalry to satisfy the senses. Driven by such consciousness, man turns to religion. He thus performs pious activities or religious functions in order to gain something material. But if such material gains are obtainable in other ways, then so-called religion is neglected. This is the situation in modern civilization. Man is thriving economically, so at present he is not very interested in religion. Churches, mosques, and temples are now practically vacant. Men are more interested in factories, shops, and cinemas than in religious places which were erected by their forefathers. This practically proves that religion is performed for some economic gains. Economic gains are needed for sense gratification. Often, when one is baffled in the pursuit of sense gratification, he takes to salvation and tries to become one with the Supreme Lord. Consequently, all these states are simply different types of sense gratification. In the Vedas, the above-mentioned 4 activities are prescribed in the regulative way so that there will not be any undue competition for sense gratification. But Srimad-Bhagavatam is transcendental to all these sense gratificatory activities. It is purely transcendental literature, which can be understood only by the pure devotees of the Lord, who are transcendental to competitive sense gratification. In the material world, there is keen competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community, nation and nation. But the devotees of the Lord rise above such competitions. They do not compete with the materialist because they are on the path back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. Such transcendentalists are non-envious and pure in heart. In the material world, everyone is envious of everyone else, and therefore there is competition. But the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from material envy, but are well-wishers of everyone. And they strive to establish a competitionless society with God in the center. The temporary socialist's conception of a competitionless society is artificial because in the socialist state there is a competition for the post of dictator. Member to Trump. Oh. Sorry, I can't help it. It's like, just rolls off that I can't help it. From the point of view of the Vedas, or from the point of view of common human activities, sense gratification is the basis of material life. There are 3 paths mentioned in the Vedas. One involves fruitive activities to gain promotion to better planets. Another involves worshipping different demigods for promotion to the planets of the demigods. And another involves realizing the absolute truth and his impersonal feature and becoming one with him. The impersonal aspect of the absolute truth is not the highest. It's still absolute, but it's not the highest. Above the impersonal feature is the Paramatma feature, and above this is the personal feature of the absolute truth, or Bhagavan. Srimad-Bhagavatam gives information about the absolute truth in his personal feature. It is higher than the impersonalist literatures and higher than the Jnana-kanda division of the Vedas. It is even higher than the Karma-kanda division and even higher than the Upasana-kanda division, because it recommends the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. In the Karma-kanda, there is competition to reach heavenly planets for better sense gratification. And there is similar competition in the Jnana-kanda and the Upasana-kanda. The Srimad-Bhagavatam is superior to all of these because it aims at the supreme truth, which is the substance or the root of all categories. From Srimad-Bhagavatam, one can come to know the substance as well as the categories. The substance is the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord, and all emanations are relative forms of energy. Nothing is apart from the substance, but at the same time, the energies are different from the substance. This conception is not contradictory. Srimad-Bhagavatam explicitly promulgates this simultaneously one and different philosophy of the Vedanta Sutra, which begins with Janmad Yasya Sutra. This knowledge that the energy of the Lord is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord is the answer to the mental speculator's attempt to establish the energy as the absolute. When this knowledge is factually understood, one sees the conceptions of monism and dualism to be imperfect. Development of this transcendental consciousness, grounded in the conception of simultaneously one and different, leads one immediately to the stage of freedom from the threefold miseries. The threefold miseries are: 1. Those miseries which arise from the mind and body. 2. Those miseries inflicted by other living beings. And 3. Those miseries arising from natural catastrophes over which one has no control. Srimad-Bhagavatam begins with the surrender of the devotee unto the absolute truth, absolute person. The devotee is fully aware that he is one with the absolute, and at the same time in the eternal position of servant to the absolute. In the material conception, one falsely thinks himself the Lord of all he surveys, and therefore he is always troubled by the threefold miseries of life. But as soon as one comes to know his real position as transcendental servant, he at once becomes free from all miseries. As long as the living entity is trying to master material nature, there is no possibility of his becoming servant of the Supreme. Service to the Lord is rendered in pure consciousness of one's spiritual identity. By service, one is immediately freed from material encumbrances. Over and above this, Srimad-Bhagavatam is a personal commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Sri Vyasadeva. It was written in the maturity of his spiritual life through the mercy of Narada. Sri Vyasadeva is the authorized incarnation of Narayana, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, there is no question as to his authority. He is the author of all other Vedic literatures. Yet he recommends the study of Srimad-Bhagavatam above all others. In other Puranas, there are different methods set forth by which one can worship the demigods. But in the Bhagavatam, only the Supreme Lord is mentioned. The Supreme Lord is the total body, and the demigods are the different parts of that body. Consequently, one who worships the Supreme Lord does not need to worship the demigods, because the Supreme Lord becomes fixed in the heart of the devotee immediately. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended the Srimad-Bhagavatam as the spotless Purana and distinguished it from all other Puranas. The proper method for receiving this transcendental message is to hear it submissively. A challenging attitude cannot help one realize this transcendental message. One particular word is used herein for proper guidance. This word is shushushu. One must be anxious to hear this transcendental message. The desire to sincerely hear is the first qualification. Less fortunate persons are not at all interested in hearing this Srimad-Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but the application is difficult. Unfortunate people find time enough to hear idle social and political conversations, but when invited to attend a meeting of devotees to hear Srimad-Bhagavatam, they suddenly become reluctant. Or they indulge in hearing the portion of the Bhagavatam they are unfit to hear. Sometimes professional readers of the Bhagavatam immediately plunge into the confidential topics of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, which they interpret as sex literature. Srimad-Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the beginning. Those who are fit to assimilate this work are mentioned in this shloka. One becomes qualified to hear Srimad-Bhagavatam after many pious deeds. The intelligent person, with thoughtful discretion, can be assured by the great sage Vyasadeva that he can realize the Supreme Personality directly by hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam. Without undergoing the different stages of realization set forth in the Vedas, one can be lifted immediately to the position of Paramahamsa simply by agreeing to receive this message. End of purport. Mm-hmm. Or as our Lord Jesus Christ said, let those who have ears hear. Everyone's got ears.
I could listen to this.
Everyone's got ears. Everyone's got a flap, a hole, little filaments inside that go and allow you to hear sound which is outside of your body. Everybody's got them. So what did he mean? Let those who have ears hear. The religious intelligence of the world has become so fallen that they can't even hear that simple thing and understand how can there be more than one God, and they fight one another thinking that one God is different than another God, and it's just the ignorance is so thick. But we have personal experience of this, that if you just agree to hear this Bhagavatam submissively, the desire will automatically increase gradually more and more to actually understand what you're hearing. Because it's not possible to hear it immediately and understand it all immediately. It's not possible. We shouldn't have false expectations, of ourselves that we can just hear it. Oh, I don't understand that. Okay, I'm going somewhere else because it says that, anybody who hears this is getting the truth. Well, I'm not getting the truth, so I'm going somewhere else. That means they don't have the desire, the strong, sincere, intense desire to understand, to want to know. That's the only qualification. Sincerity. Text 3. Nigabakalptaror galitam palam Shrukamukhad amrita drava samyutam Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam Mukhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad-Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Purport. In the two previous shlokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic scriptures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this shloka it is stated that Srimad-Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The Vedas are compared to the desire tree because they contain all things knowable by man. They deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realization. The Vedas contain regulative principles of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subject matter, and all that may be necessary to keep the body and soul together. Above and beyond all this are specific directions for spiritual realization. Regulated knowledge involves a gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform. And the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all spiritual tastes, or rasas. Every living entity, beginning with Brahma, the firstborn living being within the material world, down to the insignificant ant, desires to relish some sort of taste derived from sense perceptions. These sensual pleasures are technically called rasas. Such rasas are of different varieties. In the revealed scriptures, the following 12 varieties of rasas are enumerated. 1. Raudra, anger. 2. Adbhuta, wonder. 3. Shringara, conjugal love. 4. Hasya, comedy. 5. Vira, chivalry. 6. Daya, mercy. 7. Dasya, servitorship. 8. Sakya, fraternity. 9. Bhayanaka, horror. 10. Bibhatsa, shock. 11. Shanta, neutrality. And 12. Vatsalya, parenthood. The sum total of all these rasas are called affection or love. Primarily, such signs of love are manifested in adoration, service, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. But when these 5 are absent, love is present indirectly in anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, fear, shock, and so on. For example, when a man is in love with a woman, the rasa is called conjugal love. But when such loving affairs are disturbed, there may be wonder, anger, shock, or even horror. Excuse me. Sometimes loving affairs between two persons culminate in ghastly murder scenes. Such rasas are displayed between man and between animal and animal. There is no possibility of an exchange of rasa between a man and an animal, or between a man and any other species of human being within the material world. I can't help myself laughing because I just saw this little clip, a news clip. There was this guy who decided to make a pet out of a boa constrictor. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wasn't a boa constrictor. It was a poisonous snake. I think it was a cobra. It was a cobra. So he walked around everywhere with this cobra wrapped around him, and to feed him, He was driving down the road one day, and the cobra just went like this, put his hood up, and then boom, bit him right in the nose. So he had enough sense to call SOS or whatever, 911 or whatever, And there he was in the car, the poison was going through his body. He was going to die, and they showed up in time. And somehow or other they give him some, antidote or whatever, and he didn't die. Stupid is what stupid does. I don't know. I don't know. Somebody does. You can be sure of that much. Somebody does. Okay, the rasas are exchanged between members of the same species, but as far as the spirit souls are concerned, they are one qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the Supreme Living Being and the spiritual whole, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual exchange, or rasa, is fully exhibited in spiritual existence between living beings and the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore described in the Shruti mantras, Vedic hymns, as the fountainhead of all rasas. When one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchanges one's constitutional rasa with the Lord, then the living being is actually happy. These Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has his constitutional position, which is endowed with a particular type of rasa to be exchanged with the personality of Godhead. In the liberated condition only, this primary rasa is experienced in full. In the material existence, the rasa is experienced in the perverted form, which is temporary, and thus the rasas of the material world are exhibited in the material form of raudra, anger, and so on. Therefore, one who attains full knowledge of the different rasas, these different rasas, which are the basic principles of activities, can understand the false representations of the original rasas which are reflected in the material world. The learned scholar seeks to relish the real rasa in the spiritual form. In the beginning, he desires to become one with the Supreme. Thus, less intelligent transcendentalists cannot go beyond this conception of becoming one with the spirit whole without knowing of the different rasas. In this shloka, it is definitely stated that spiritual rasa, which is relished even in the liberated stage, can be experienced in the literature of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, due to its being the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. By submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of one's heart's desire. I'll repeat that again. By submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of one's heart's desire. But one must be very careful to hear the message from the right source. Srimad-Bhagavatam is exactly received from the right source because it was brought by Narada Muni from the spiritual world and given to his disciple, Sri Vyasadeva. The latter, in turn, delivered the message to his son, Srila Shukadev Goswami. And Srila Shukadev Goswami delivered the message to Maharaj Parikshit during the 7 days before the king's death. Srila Shukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from his very birth. He was liberated even in the womb of his mother. And he did not undergo any sort of spiritual training after his birth. At birth, no one is qualified, neither in the mundane nor in the spiritual sense. But Sri Shukadev Goswami, due to his being a perfectly liberated soul, did not have to undergo an evolutionary process for spiritual realization. Yet despite his being a completely liberated person, situated in the transcendental position above the three material modes, he was attracted to this transcendental rasa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is adored by liberated souls who sing Vedic hymns. The Supreme Lord's pastimes are more attractive to liberated souls than to mundane people. He is of necessity, not impersonal, because it is only possible to carry on transcendental rasa with a person. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are narrated, and the narration is systematically depicted by Srila Shukadev Goswami. Thus the subject matter is appealing to all classes of persons, including those who seek liberation, to relish the humor of becoming one with the Supreme Whole. In Sanskrit, the parrot is also known as shuka. When a ripened fruit is cut by the red beaks of such birds, its sweet flavor is enhanced. The Vedic fruit, which is mature and ripe in knowledge, is spoken through the lips of Srila Shukadev Goswami, who is compared to the parrot, not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his learned father, but for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. The subject matter is so presented through the lips of Srila Shukadev Goswami that any sincere listener who hears submissively can at once relish transcendental tastes, which are distinct from the perverted tastes of the material world. The ripened fruit is not dropped all of a sudden from the highest planet of Krishna Loka. Rather, it has come down carefully through the chain of disciplic succession without change or disturbance. Foolish people who are not in the transcendental disciplic succession commit great blunders by trying to understand the highest transcendental rasa, known as the rasa dance, without following in the footsteps of Shukadev Goswami, who presents this fruit very carefully by stages of transcendental realization. One should be intelligent enough to know the position of Srimad-Bhagavatam by considering personalities like Shukadeva Goswami, who deals with the subject so carefully. This process of disciplic succession of the Bhagavat school suggests that in the future also, for all time, Srimad-Bhagavatam has to be understood from a person who is factually a representative of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. A professional man who makes a business out of reciting the Bhagavatam illegally is certainly not a representative of Shukadeva Goswami. Such a man's business is only to earn his livelihood. Therefore, one should refrain from hearing the lectures of such professional men. Such men usually go to the most confidential part of the literature without undergoing the gradual process of understanding this grave subject. They usually plunge into the subject matter of the rasa dance, which is misunderstood by the foolish class of men. Some of them take this to be immoral, while others try to cover it up by their own stupid interpretations. They have no desire to follow in the footsteps of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. One should conclude, therefore, that the serious student of rasa should receive the message of the Bhagavatam in the chain of disciplic succession from Srila Shukadeva Goswami, who describes the Bhagavatam from its beginning, and not whimsically to satisfy the mundaner who has very little knowledge in transcendental science. Srimad-Bhagavatam is so carefully presented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian juice through the mouth of Shukadeva Goswami or his bona fide representatives. Hare Krishna. So those three verses are the Mangalacharna, or the essence of the whole rest of the work. And the rest of now it will start the story of the Bhagavatam, how it came to be, what the historical events were, and everything. And it goes on in the different categories to explain the absolute truth so thoroughly and so carefully, as it said, Prabhupada said in the purport, that it's not possible to misunderstand. But the one qualification is, there's two qualifications. One is honesty, and the other is lack of envy, freedom from envy. If you're envious of Krishna, or if your tendency is when you see someone well situated to feel bad because I'm not situated like that, or how to bring this person down so that I can be, override the person, then you can't hear the Bhagavatam. These two things, honesty and freedom from envy. And as soon as you hear with those qualities, then Krishna is so pleased from within the heart, he goes, hey, remember this? Hey. Sound familiar? Hey. And from in the heart, you get revelation and can understand God and taste something different, something that you've never tasted in this material world. Hare Krishna. So we're very fortunate to have been able to hear even the first three verses, and there's 18,000. That means there's so. I'm so fortunate, I was commissioned by the BBT trustees to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Bhagavatam. So I'm actually practicing. I've been practicing for 4.5 years to do this. So, Hare Krishna. 18,000 verses without making a mistake with the purports.
Got it.
Huh?
You got it, Maharaj.
Yeah. By your mercy, by all of your mercy, give me blessings so that I can do this, accomplish this before I die. And everybody's going to die. I mean, you may not think you're going to die, but everybody's going to die. And when you get over 72, right, Sharva? When you get over 70, everything changes. Everything changes. You got things start to happen that you cannot ignore. Well, anyway, people ignore it anyway. So spend your youth properly. Hear this Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Do service, purify your hearts, and then you'll be happy, completely happy. Even when things go on with the body or other people's bodies or the world, political, whatever, you can be actually happy if you can assimilate this Bhagavatam and get a taste for hearing the Bhagavatam. So special. Okay, so we'll have a little reflections. Any points that stuck out in your minds that you want to discuss or that you want to share? Realizations? Whatever. Now I want to repeat the point that I made in the beginning that I was talking to Robert about. I got a notification on my phone today that I'm up to 16.9, or at least before tonight, I was up to 16.9 gigabytes used, from the phone. in my unlimited data program, whatever it is. And I'm only allowed 22. I'm actually I get unlimited, but only 22 will allow high speed. And then after you go over 22, then depending on where you are, the speed can get affected like significantly. So I may have to cut the recording, a little early starting tonight for the next week, just to make sure we don't go over. Because I'm pretty sure if we just do an hour, we stay under a gig. Haribol, Doctor. Hare Krishna. Haribol. Okay. Thank you very much. All of you out in cyberspace. Now I'm going to cut this off. But that doesn't mean we can still talk if you want, but I'm going to cut this off. All of you are out in cyberspace. I got the word from Ragaleka from the UK, where we started to do this. And it's the grace of her and her husband that we're able to have a fan page, and I don't have to worry about being on the Facebook. Haribol, Hare Krishna. Very happy about that. But it's there. And we're up to over 600 followers now. So I thank all of you for that. And I encourage all of you to share and get your friends to share so that we can really have as many people as possible hear this Bhagavatam all the way through, because you can feel it. Can you feel it coming? Dun, 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 dun. It's gonna set you back on your heels. It's a famous song when I was a kid. Anyway, you probably never heard of it. It's before your time. All right. Hare Krishna, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. Thank you.